Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live from the Sofa here in the UK, where you will find us every weekday between 12 and 1. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, that's just fine if you want to do that. But to get really involved, where you should join us is on behance.net/Adobe Live, because that's where you can get involved with the community in the chat. It's where you can ask questions so we can find out more about our guest and so much more. And beyond the stream, we also, of course, have our own Discord, so we can carry on the chat just there. So today we are joined by Ron Timehin. Ron, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Cool, that's awesome. So don't forget, if you've got your questions for Ron, go ahead, pop those in the chat. And as we go through, okay, then we can just chat around those things and ask the questions. But first, it's a quick thing from me. It's me doing the first bit here. What we're going to do is every day this week, we're going to share a little bit of what's new in the Creative Cloud updates that landed with us last week. They'll just be very quick hits, and then we'll carry on talking to our guests. So what I want to show you is how the select subject algorithm has been updated in the latest version of Photoshop and optimized for portraits. So that we, excuse me, and so that we have something to contrast with, I'm here in Photoshop CC 2019 just for the moment. And what I'm going to do with the layer that I've got here, I'm going to run select subject. So I'm going to go up to the select menu, come down to subject, and let the AI algorithm work its magic at creating a selection. Now, it's done that for me, so I'm going to go ahead now and click on the Create Layer Mask icon just here, and look at the result. It's not bad, but we've got quite a lot of work to do there in refinement where the hair is. Now, if I switch across to the latest version of Photoshop, so I've got a duplicate of that file and run this again, check this out. So go ahead, go select subject. Pretty much, actually, it seems to be quicker there, really, but it does a really, really good job. And now if I add a layer mask there, look how much less work I've got to do. In fact, really, for this particular one, I could just jump into select and mask and select decontaminate, just to decontaminate the color edges there. So there you are. That's today's quick tip from the new features in the Creative Cloud update that landed last week. Now we can go back to Tim, who's going to tell us a bit more about himself. So introduce yourself to everyone, Tim. I said Ron. Hello. It's because Tim's in the middle of my screen. Ron, so sorry. Tell us a bit more about yourself and and your work.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. So yeah, guys, my name is Ron Timehin, and I'm a professional photographer based in London. I've been shooting for around about 11 years now, and around 5 or 6 of those years have been professional photography shoots. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey, and it all came around in a very weird way. I actually used to be a musician when I was growing up, and I used to play the trumpet. I used to play a lot of jazz and classical. And I was able to achieve my grade 8 when I was at a very young age, which meant that I was then able to travel and play with different bands and orchestras all over the world. And music at that point was my main passion. It was my favorite art form. But as I was traveling, I decided I needed to document what I was seeing as much as possible. And I think at that point, it was the iPhone had just launched. I think it was iPhone 3G. And it was the first camera I ever owned. It was a smartphone. And so yeah, I started taking photos using a mobile device, and I think what that gave me the ability to do was to really focus on the fundamentals of photography. So things such as lighting, composition, focus. So I wasn't really worried about the nitty-gritty settings of a DSLR. So I was able just to really focus on the most important parts of photography. And I think that year sort of coincided with the launch of Instagram, and I began sharing my work on Instagram for people to review, to give feedback, whether that was positive or negative. It all really helped. And yeah, that's how my photography journey kind of started. As time went on, I started falling in love with it a lot more. I think I love the fact that you could not only use it as a creative art form, you could also document a moment in time. And I really, really love that aspect of photography. And also the editing side, the fact you could be in control of everything from the inception of the photographs to the actual taking of the photos, to the editing, to the publishing. I just love being in control of the entire process. And yeah, I decided that I wanted to pursue that as a career. And I think it might have been 2015, I received an email from Instagram directly who had said that they were going to feature me as one of their suggested users for 2 weeks. And suggested users don't exist anymore, but what it meant was at the time, every new person signing up to Instagram would be given a list of people that Instagram recommends you follow. And so I was made one of those people for 2 weeks, and my following grew around, I think it was 25,000 in a couple of weeks, which was—
I'm gonna say you're way above that now. way above that.
Growing since, but yeah, it was terrifying. I can't lie, like I was freaking out because obviously I was still very much an amateur. I was still learning, and I think having that many eyes on my work just kind of scared me really. But it also motivated me to really learn my craft and just produce the best content I could. And yeah, like it's been an incredible journey since. And yeah, I've been shooting for some of my favorite brands, working with some of my favorite brands. And I can show you some of my work now for those of you who aren't familiar with what I do.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
So I'll just share my screen so you can see. So this is my website. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
We can, yeah.
So in a nutshell, I found like the style of my photography, well, the style of photography I was most attracted to was evocative imagery, stuff that was moody, dark, but also at the same time beautiful. And I found that inspiration came through music, I would say, because I used to play a lot of jazz and a lot of blues. I found that the similarities within like moody imagery and jazz just sort of kind of bonded for me. I don't know, it's really weird, but I found that's what I enjoyed the most. And so yeah, like over the years, I've just tried to pursue that style, but also be able to translate it into anything that I need to use it in. So whether that's cityscape or landscape or portraiture, I always try and have that vision in mind. I mean, going into some of the commissions I've done, see if that works. I mean, I did some work with these brands. I was made a Sony ambassador a couple of years ago, so now I shoot commercial work for Sony. I also do workshops and tutorials for them, and I think because of the social media aspects as well, I've also been able to appear in front of the camera, which I find weird, but I mean, I'm sort of getting used to it now. It's weird as a photographer, you take the photos, but you're not often in front of the camera, so that took a bit of adjusting. But I mean, I've actually been featured by Adobe. We did a series in 2018 around Lightroom CC, so when that just launched, and being able to use it on mobile, and we created a series of short videos which sort of demonstrated the abilities and capabilities of Lightroom. So yeah, it's been absolutely fun being in front of the camera as well. And then I think as of recently, I've tried to shift my photography attention to creating more meaningful photos, or dive deeper into the storytelling aspects of photos. I think obviously I kind of learned through the Instagram sort of generation of photography, and a lot of that is very much that you shoot bangers, as they call it, which are like the hero images. So it might not have a story behind it, but if it looks cool and it stands out from the crowd, then it's deemed a good image and it will get a lot of likes. But I think as I kind of developed as a photographer and as a person, I found that I needed a bit more meaning behind the images I was taking.
Right.
And so yeah, I've been shooting a lot more documentary style photos, I'd say. And I recently did an expedition to the Sahara deserts and Morocco for a project with Samsung, but I ended up shooting a lot of imagery for my own personal self. And again, like it was incredible to witness all of this stuff. But I think as a set of images, it stood out a lot more for me than just singular images. So although I think the images themselves look good, I think as a set, the story is told a lot better. And yeah, it was weird because I used to shoot predominantly cityscape and landscape. But as I was being approached by more and more brands to shoot commercial work, I really needed to work on my portraiture. And that's when I decided, look, like I'm going to really learn how to take better portraits and turn that weakness into a strength. And I think it's very important for anyone who is trying to shoot professional work or just trying to learn new styles of photography, just keep going at it and persevere, because it will really pay off. One thing that I found that worked for me was that, well, for me moving from cityscape and landscape to portraiture, some people find it very difficult, and I know I found it quite hard at first, but the way I like to think about it is I approach the background or the setting with the cityscape in mind, and then all you have to do is incorporate the person in that frame. Right. So if you I sort of visualize it around that, and it really helps me get a bit more confident taking photos of people.
You're really good at capturing mood. I think you're awesome at capturing mood.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I also love playing around with movement. So if you see any way to incorporate movement into your photos, then that's definitely a good look. These photos, for me, are probably some of my favorites just because of what had happened. So these people are called nomads. They don't live anywhere. They roam the world basically with their belongings, and they're notoriously shy and very hard to photograph. But I was fortunate enough to spend, I think it was 10 minutes with a group of nomads, and they tried to marry me off, which was really
really?
Yeah, it was crazy. But
wow.
They allowed me to take some photos of them and spend a little bit of time with them. So yeah, for me, these images are some of my favorite I've taken to date. And yeah, so I mean, overall, I'll show you a little bit more of my personal travel stuff, cityscape, for example. So no matter where I go, I always try and keep this aesthetic in mind, and I think this is what I'm known for the most. It's London moody cityscape photography, and a lot of it is based around fog. So one thing I really love is fog. It's notoriously hard to photograph, actually, simply because
it's not very light friendly, is it, fog?
No, not at all. No. It's also very inconsistent. So I found that it normally occurs in the morning at sunrise. So I found that I've woken up at like 3-4 a.m. as photographers do to capture these scenes, and you turn up to a location and it's completely gone, or it's not low enough, or it's not thick enough. And so yeah, it's been an ongoing battle for me. But I think over the last 5 years, I've captured some images of fog that I'm very proud of.
So these are your love of fog and of atmosphere. These are in your book as well, aren't they? I saw your book.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure you guys can see it, but yeah, I think so. Last year, I was approached by a publishing company called Trope, and yeah, they decided they wanted to create a book around my foggy imagery, which was insane, to say the least. So yeah, I've now published artist, photographer. Yeah,
you are.
Which is really surreal. But they're selling all over the world, and they're in Waterstones and like major bookstores. So yeah, it's really cool, to be honest. But yeah, it's just strange. I feel like as a photographer, you're never happy. Like you're always wanting to better yourself or like to learn more. So I think that's something I love as well. There's always something to learn. And I think as the more you take photos, the more you realize how much there is to learn. And so yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's so cool. I think that's, as a conscientious photographer, that's the thing, because some people are quite happy to just, ping away. I think that you're searching for things is great. In the chat, we've got a few. Everybody is loving your work here. Loving the tone and composition, says Stuart's really on point.
Thank you.
Emma loves your work. Sandrine loves your work. Hi, Sandrine. Hi, Kirsty. Thinks it's nice work too. Robert Brock says quality. There you go. In one word, great stuff. Caroline loves listening to jazz while she's painting. Makes her feel creative. That's cool.
That's the one.
So, do you still play as well? Do
you know what? Unfortunately, I don't. No, I think so. The amount of time I spent practicing playing the trumpet, I mean, I was practicing maybe 4 or 5 hours every single day, and I was performing very, very regularly. So being able to get back to that standard would take a lot of practice, and I've kind of dedicated my time to photography now. So unfortunately a lot, but I still listen to a lot of music, and music influences a lot of my work. So I'm still up to date with everything, really.
Everything. Cool. Yeah. There's eye candies is how bangers would have been referred to back in the day, I'm told. So there we go.
Awesome.
Let's just see if we've got any questions in here for you at this particular point. Alana says, these are beautiful. Work that has a backstory is also my favorite. I think that's because it adds depth. Would you agree with that, Ron, as well? I think
yeah, definitely. 100%.
Yeah, you've got more of a personal connection to it. You can sense it in your work. Wise words, I think. There you go. So amazing images. Love your work. What is your creative process? Mustafa's asking, what is your creative process when you're capturing your images? That's a good question.
That's a good question. It would depend what I'm shooting, first and foremost. But for cityscape photography, for example, a lot of it is location based. So a lot of the work that I do when coming to shooting cityscapes comes before I've even picked up the camera. So a lot of it is about research, finding unique vantage points. Often when I find cool locations, it's actually because I've connected with some local photographers from that region who know all the hidden spots, or I found online. I've also been on Google Earth and used satellite view to kind of have a look around and have a look at what viewpoints I want to capture. So there are lots of different ways, but I think, yeah, specifically for cityscape, research is a lot of the work. I'll often then go to that location, sunsets. I mean, at the prime times I like to shoot. So I love to shoot at sunrise, sunset, and blue hour. So just after and nighttime. I try to avoid midday. The light is very, very harsh. But that doesn't mean you should shy away from it. I've seen people use harsh light to their advantage. I mean, even for example, this image here, this was shot around 1 p.m. and because the light was very harsh, it created all these patterns. So I think if you're able to manipulate light, then definitely go ahead and shoot in midday. But for me, I like to shoot normally sunset,
golden hours and blue hour.
Exactly. And I won't just go to a location once. I'll normally go there 3 or 4 times just to capture different scenarios. And I'll go when it's raining, when it's stormy, when it's snowing.
Cool. Do you use anything like TPS? Do you know TPS, the app TPS, the Photographer's Ephemeris?
I've not heard of that. Actually.
Oh, so that's the thing. Have a look at that. You might find that interesting because that shows what time all of the different sunrises are. Because there's like a nautical sunrise and an official sunrise and all of those things. But really handy, so you can see with satellite imagery all of these different lines showing you the trajectory of the sun and all sorts. Really good.
Oh,
so
amazing.
Have a look at that. I didn't know if you used it at all. Some of my friends do.
Heard of that one. That sounds amazing. TPS,
TPS, the Photographer's Ephemeris. Nice. A few people are asking what camera you use or what's your main camera setup.
So I shoot Sony, and I've moved. So do you know what? So I went from iPhone. I then moved to a Canon 650D. And I found that was quite a good entry level camera. It wasn't I think I bought it for around £350 at the time. But that gave me, it was a crop sensor camera, but it gave me the ability to play around with ISO, shutter speed, f-stops, and learn the kind of fundamentals around the DSLR. I then moved to a full frame camera and I was blown away. I was like, oh my goodness, like full frame is incredible. I absolutely love it. And that was a Canon 6D. And as time went on, I think I'd broken my 6D, and a good friend of mine called Toby Shinobi, who I think is also an Adobe ambassador. He lent me his Sony A7R, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, the technology integrated into the body was just way more advanced than what Canon had. And so from then I just stayed Sony. So I've had A7R, A7R2. I now shoot on the A7R3.
Same as mine.
Yeah,
cool.
And I've also got the A9 as well.
Yep.
I'm currently testing out the A7R4 as well,
Right,
which
wow.
is an absolute beast. The file sizes are huge though. That's my only issue. But
Okay.
I mean, it's like 60 megapixels. What do you expect? But
Wow.
yeah. So
Okay.
that's kind of what I shoot on. In terms of lenses, I think I selectively choose my lenses for what I'm shooting. When it comes to landscapes and cityscapes, the lenses I would normally use are like 16 to 35 2.8. I think that's a brilliant lens. But I also use a 70 to 200 because that can create some really, really interesting depth in the images and compression. So I think don't limit yourself to what lenses you use when it comes to cityscape and landscape. Every different lens has its own unique style and take. Interiors I like to go as wide as possible. So I've also got the 12 to 24, which is really wide. For portraits, I think my favorite lenses are 35 1.4. I normally use that for when I'm trying to capture more of the scene within the portrait. So to tell more of a story behind where I am. A 50mm again is like, I mean, that's the kind of golden lens that people love to use. So 50mm 1.4 is great, and also the 85 1.8 as well is a beautiful lens. Oh,
so sorry. Do you use are these mainly Sony master lenses you use, or are they? Or do you use anything like Tamron or anything? Because sometimes they're a slightly lower cost equivalent with very little compromise. Have you ever used any of those things?
I have not used Tamron, but I've used Sigma. And I still use Sigma as well.
Also,
Sigma are great. Yeah, really good. I mean, sometimes half the price of the Sony lens. So yeah, Sigma I'd highly recommend. I've heard good things about Tamron as well. So yeah, definitely give those brands a go for sure. I'm
just thinking for the people that, because of Sony master lenses, you get what you pay for, right? In terms of lens technology. But I'm just thinking about people who are maybe upping their game a little bit and might not have the budget for a Sony master lens, that they can look at those alternatives. Yeah, Sigma are brilliant too. Yeah, Sigma's great. Also, if you are, one thing I did was obviously all my lenses were Canon, and I moved to a Sony body. They're not natively compatible, so Sigma actually sell a converter, and that means you can put your Canon lenses on your Sony. So that helps as well if you are looking to swap. If you're not, then no worries. But there are definitely other options out there for getting what you want. Perfect. Kirsty's asked, actually I think it was Kirsty, there's so much going on in here at the moment. It's really good. The chat's quite busy. But I definitely saw a question. I'm pretty sure it's from Kirsty just a moment ago, around your process in Lightroom and Photoshop. So is that something we can see today? Can we?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can jump into that now.
Fantastic.
So I can show you. So yeah, I mean, we've got the latest Lightroom. I use Lightroom Classic. I think just to note, you can use CC or Classic. It's whatever you're comfortable with. I think just because I've been using Lightroom Classic for such a long time, I'm just used to the interface and I prefer it. So yeah, I'll be on this today. This image was taken at the Tate's Gallery a few years ago at an exhibition that was outside that created a sense of fog, effectively. And yeah, so I'm just going to jump straight into it. I think the first thing I normally do is I head down to the lens corrections and I enable the profile corrections. And what that does is it just removes any distortion or any vignetting on the edges where your lens curves. So I always do that. That's something I do. I remove the chromatic aberration as well. I also then transform the image, and I mean, Lightroom is amazing for this. It just simplifies the entire process. It's very quick. So if you click auto, it just rectifies the level and the perspective. And yeah, it's one click and it's done. You know, it's perfect. So that's what I normally do. I'll then crop the image so you can actually crop by clicking this or a short key is R. And I'm just going to make this a little bit more defined.
Okay.
I think.
Maddie, by the way, is saying she loves that image, and she's also asking, did you have to get permission for the children, or were you okay because it's not their faces aren't clear?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of photographers there at the time, and the parents were with the kids, and they didn't really mind too much. And I think, yeah, because their faces aren't really distinctive, and when you see the final edit as well, you won't really be able to see any of their faces. So I think I can get away with it. Normally, I tend not to take photos of children if their face is very distinctive, just for their own safety, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But, yeah, normally I think something like this is okay.
Yeah.
So then from here, what I would do is I would change the white balance and exposure. Those are the first two things in tonality that I would change. I'm actually going to leave the exposure just for a minute, just to see. I think it's quite evenly exposed at the moment. So I'm going to start with the white balance. So there's two ways of doing this. You can click the icon here and select what type of lighting conditions it was. Auto normally works quite well. However, for me, it's a bit warm. So to get a more accurate reading of your white balance, you can actually use this picker here. And you can give that a click, and you can actually select somewhere on the image that has very even tones. And I think to get the most accurate reading, on this box at the bottom, you can see 3 numbers. And what you want is those 3 numbers to be as close as each other as possible. So picking something like a gray or a white or a black, something neutral normally works. So I mean, this is pretty close. And as you can see, it's made a little adjustment, but it's very important when you're editing. Cool. So from here, I mean, I've created my own presets over time, and I think this image works best in black and white. So I've got my black and white presets that I will apply. In a nutshell, what I've done is I've played around with the highlights a tiny bit. The tone curve is really where most of the magic happens. And so have a play with tone curve. I would really recommend spending a lot of time just playing around with the different color channels. It's a very, very powerful tool. You can also click this button here and it will give you a little bit more, what's the word now? Not detail. You can edit a little bit further in this tab, and it's just an easier way of editing the tone curve if you don't really know what each aspect does. But in a nutshell, the top is the whites. It's the brightest parts of your image. When you move along to around this part, you've got the lights, which are the brighter points, but not the brightest points.
Higher end of the midtones, really, would you say?
Exactly, yeah, the higher end of the midtones. Yeah. You move down, and you've got the lower end of the midtones, and then here you've got the blacks or the shadows. But I'll go into a little bit more about that in my next image that I'll edit. Yeah.
So Stuart's just Stuart. That's yes, it is. That is an S-tone curve. Just there.
That's correct.
Alan's just saying I use a slow shutter speed for children, then just record their energy. And so yeah, there you go.
That's a wicked idea. Yeah.
Lovely granularity. I was going to say to you actually that when you're going for a grey, I guess because of the immediacy of a lot of your shots like this with fog with people involved, it's not the sort of thing you could exactly pop a color target up in front of, because the moment's gone, I guess, by the time you do it. Yeah, I
mean, I normally leave my camera in auto white balance, so and I mean Lightroom does an amazing job of reading that information, and then you can change it from there. So I don't really worry too much. I think if I'm doing studio work, then I will use a grey tile or something that I can use as a reference. And so, yeah, I mean, sharpening, I could sharpen this a little bit. I tend not to go above 40. I find I like the sort of film aesthetic style of editing to my photos. So, I mean, you can see with the tone curve here, that's a typical film S curve that you would see. So yeah, that comes across a lot in my editing. Okay, cool. So now what I want to do, I want to make this a little bit more dramatic and a bit more moody. And a great way to do this is by adding a vignette. or vignette. I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Vignette. No, you're right. Yeah.
And so there are different ways you can do it. There's one way of doing it is here, post crop vignetting, and you can simply move it down, and then you can play around with the midpoint to tailor it to your liking. Another way of doing this is actually in the lens correction module, and if you head into manual, you can then add it here as well, which creates a slightly different effect. But again, it's another way you can use it. The only issue with using it this way is that if you crop your image, the vignette won't automatically go to that crop. It will still just be for the full image, the entirety.
Right.
So I think probably the best way to use vignette is with this module here.
Yeah.
If you really want to have a very accurate vignette, then what I would suggest doing is you can actually use this tool here, the radial filter tool. And you can give that a click, and you can actually draw a circle over the area that you want to be, have the image vignette around. And so if you then play around with the controls in this, you can see it's affecting the middle part of the radial filter. So what you want to do is you want to click invert, and then that way it will affect everything outside of that radial filter. And then that way you've got now something that's a lot more defined on exactly what you want.
I'm a big fan of those myself too.
Yeah, they're really powerful tools. So I'm going to go with something like that. And I mean, I'm going to add some contrast to this image now just to see what it looks like. And I mean, now, like, you can see how much more it pops. So I mean, just from before and after, if you hit, is it the backslash key or the front slash key? I'm not sure which one it is, but this is before and this is after.
Yep.
So already we've got this. Now what I'm noticing here is I've got these little dust specks on my image, and that was probably because there was so much water vapor and smoke and stuff going around. But really easy way to get rid of this is to use this spot removal tool. So you can give that a click, and it's very simple. All you have to do is just go over it, give it a click, and Lightroom automatically knows what part is most similar to that, and it will just remove it. So I'm just going to get
so smart.
It's really clever, yeah. There's one down here. Just give that a click, and we'll try this one as well. So you can also move them around if you want it to sample a different part of the image. Then you could do so, but I think that's fine. Cool. Right. So this is my base edit, I would say, and what I'll do from here is I'll then take it into Photoshop. I want to keep it in the highest resolution possible. I've shot this in RAW, as you can see in my settings here. And so what I would do to get it into Lightroom in the highest possible quality, I would actually right click and then click Edit In and then Photoshop 2020. And then that way, I think it just takes the entire RAW file and brings it over into Photoshop. So you're not losing any information in that process.
It's cool. Do you kind of work in, when you're in Photoshop, do you kind of work in 16-bit as long as possible to keep all of the stuff in there? So
yeah, 100%. Working in 16-bit is definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
I found that sometimes when I've exported from Lightroom in 8-bit and then put it into Photoshop and then edited it in 8-bit, sometimes the colors don't seem to blend as well. And that's because there aren't as many colors as 16-bit. So yeah, try and edit in 16-bit until the actual export of your image, the final image.
Yeah.
It'll work a lot better.
I think so many things are supported in 16-bit in Photoshop now, really, that there's no need to go out. I mean, it used to be with some things you'd have to drop down to 8-bit from there, but I think so much is supported in that now. It's really
very
good.
True. Yeah, for sure. Cool. So we're in Photoshop now, and this is where I now tidy up and then just change a little bit of the toning just to make it look a bit cleaner. So one thing I always do is I always duplicate the layer. A quick key for that is Command J, if you don't know already. And from here, what I'd like to do is go to Image and then actually just use Auto Tone or Auto Contrast. It does a pretty good job, but it just gives the image a little bit more pop to me. And so that's before and that's after. It's not all that much, but it has an effect, in my opinion. And so that's what I do. And then from here, what I want to do is I want to remove any distractions that are in the image. So for me, this pillar on the right is quite a nuisance. And so what I would do is I'll use the lasso tool. If you click and hold, you can change between either a freehand lasso tool, so you can actually draw around the image, or you can click and hold and use the polygonal lasso tool.
Yep.
And that way you can draw shapes. And so for this example, I'm going to just draw around this.
You can also do that, you know, by holding down the Option key with the regular lasso.
That's true as well.
Yeah,
yeah.
You could do that, yeah. By the way, the Command-J shortcut for duplicate layer, I call that the EastEnders shortcut. Do you know why? No. I call it the EastEnders shortcut because if you were on EastEnders, you wouldn't pronounce duplicate with a D. You would say duplicate it. Yeah, so if you want to duplicate a layer, it's Command-J to duplicate. That's why I call it the EastEnders shortcut.
Oh my days. Okay.
Sorry, mate.
I'm never going to forget that now. That's brilliant.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, but I mean, you already know the technique, so you can afford to dispense that. So
nice. Cool. And yeah, so this this technique I'm using is actually called ContentAware Fill, and it's the easiest way, I believe, to get rid of aspects in the image that you don't want.
Yeah.
So to do that, we've got our selection. You then right-click, and then you go to Fill. And then in the content part up here, you can change it to whatever you want. But ContentAware Fill is what will get rid of the distractions. It will analyze the image and then deem fit what needs to be taken away. And it works pretty well. And this has just been updated, I think, in the latest
it has,
release as well. So we can give that a click. And we'll let it do its magic. Sometimes it might need a little bit of tweaking further than that, but normally it works pretty well. With large sections of the image like this, and such a high-res image, it can take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, normally
it's so clever though, isn't it? And it's a lot quicker than you doing it yourself.
Definitely.
You know, so
definitely. So, and as you can see, it's done a very good job.
It has,
of just adding a bit more fog. If I wanted to tidy that up a little bit more, what I would do is I'd actually use the clone and stamp tool. And so you can use S as a shortcut, or you can click this icon here. And I think what I'm going to do is this section here, I'm just going to blend it a little bit better. And so what I want to do is I'm going to take a section from either here or here. I think we'll go for here. And you want to hold the Alt key. And when you hold the Alt key, that means you're now choosing what part of the image you want to copy. Or select, if that makes sense. So I'm going to copy this bit, give it a click, you let go of Alt, and now when you paint, you can see this plus marker is actually just using that as a reference point for you to paint over, I guess. We can do this very roughly at the moment, and then I think you've got something a little bit like that, and now it looks a lot better. So this is before the auto contrast and before the distractions were removed. So I mean, when you put it into Photoshop, it didn't look that bad in my opinion, but then once you actually add or take away these elements, it just really defines the image a lot more. There's also something down here which I want to get rid of, and so
people are loving this, by the way, Ron. Bob Demers, who so you might be surprised that some of your audience today come from as far away as New Zealand. So Steve joins us almost every day from New Zealand. Bob has started joining us most days from Austin.
Okay.
He's not from Austin, he's from Arizona. Hello.
Arizona, nice.
I'm having a real earworm day today. Joins us from Arizona. He sets a 3:45 a.m. alarm. What? So he can catch these live rather than on the replay.
Oh, you're a legend.
He has said, in a world of millions of fleeting images, to linger on this image, to get to experience it for a time is so refreshing. How about that? Sounds really lovely. Really lovely. Bob, if you love this work, you might want to check out Ron's book.
Yeah, sure.
Which the title? Just give me the title of that again. It's fog,
It's
isn't
called
it?
London Fog.
London Fog.
That's that,
Yeah. Fantastic.
So yeah, as you can see, I'm just again removing just a few more distractions using the ContentAware Fill, and yeah, I mean it's amazing. Look at that.
Yes, really good.
So
really, really good.
And there you have it. I mean, yeah. So from Lightroom to this to then that. I mean, now it looks like a finished image in my opinion. And you can crop it and do whatever you want from there.
Do you work on a tablet, Ron? Do you use a tablet? So Kirsty was asking if you used a tablet at all for your work, or
do you know what? I don't. No, I don't.
No?
I've never really worked with one.
Haven't felt the need.
Yeah. There are definite benefits for that though. When you're doing a lot of heavy work in Photoshop, then yeah, I recommend a tablet.
Sorry, I was just going to say that Tim has also said that this, when you're working with these cloud things, could also be a time for Kyle Webster's concept art brushes to shine. They're really good for working on things like this when you've got atmosphere. Really good. Great shout, Tim. Yep.
Yeah.
Steve from New Zealand saying good day. But in the Kiwi way, which has an I in it. It's a good day.
Nice. I'm dying to get to New Zealand. That's high up on my list when we can travel.
Yeah. Absolutely same.
Cool. So yeah, that's the first one. Are there any other questions or?
There's plenty of stuff going through. They're talking about cloud brushes right now. Let's have a quick scan through. People saying about ContentAware Fill.
Yeah.
Actually, you mentioned earlier that ContentAware Fill has considerably improved over the last versions, and actually, yeah, that's really good. I think we have something on that coming up later on in the week.
I mean, to be honest, like I thought it was good before, but now the recent update is really improved. It's
just getting tighter and tighter on focus, so you can actually say, and by focus, of course, I don't mean sharpness. I mean giving its attention to a particular area. Julie Featherstone saying ContentAware Fill was one of the greatest inventions. Uses it all the time, and Sandrine's agreeing with that. Ditto to build out images. There we go. Let's have a quick look. Steve also joins us. San Fran. Do you ever sleep, Steve? My word, 2:30 a.m. starts for that. A question earlier from Pia, I believe, was how have you coped with, for somebody that is outside so much, that is traveling so much and visiting these different locations, how have you coped over the recent lockdown period?
It's been tough. It has been very tough. I mean, I'm lucky, I'm young, I'm healthy, so it's a lot of people have had a tougher time than me without a doubt, but I think as a creative it has been quite tricky. I think I spend a lot of time exploring and traveling and out taking photos, so I think initially I felt quite restricted, but I mean that's the time when you need to adapt and you need to look at other creative art forms or look at ways to improve what you're doing. And so I mean I dedicated my time to working on my editing techniques, reading a lot more books, watching YouTube tutorials, the stuff on Skillshare, obviously Adobe as well. So I used this time to really learn, I think. And I spent a lot of time working on stuff that I hadn't previously before, so personal projects. I mean, I'm creating a series of zines, which should have QR codes in them, which you can then scan, and it will show you an editing tutorial of how I edited the photo. Oh, cool! So I'm working on some concepts like that. So yeah, I'm just trying to keep busy, really. And I've shot some stuff at home. I guess I've tried some still art, some still photography, just to keep my fingers working.
Have you so your roots are in mobile photography, or mobiography, as some people call it. Your roots are there in that. Do you ever use Lightroom Mobile? Do you ever shoot through Lightroom Mobile, because that has incredible controls to the camera? Have you tried?
I've shot a couple of times, through Lightroom Mobile. Yeah, it's really powerful actually. I normally use Lightroom CC when I'm on the move. So for example, when I was shooting these photos in New York, I had my iPhone, which I could edit on and then upload to Instagram. I also had my iPad Pro, And I've got the iPad Pro and then like the Apple Pencil.
Yeah.
So then I can edit using that as well, using Lightroom CC. So yeah, they're definitely, yeah, I use Lightroom when I'm traveling a lot. Yeah.
You could sidecar if you. I don't know if you use. I mean, I can see you're on a Mac there.
Yeah.
Did you know? So we've had this come up a few times over the last few weeks. So I'm dying to ask.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. We've had people on using AstroPad, for example. Mainly illustrators who use AstroPad.
Yeah.
But there are photographers, of course, who need to use a pen, as you just indicated, for brushing in adjustments and so on.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on Catalina, OS 10.15 Catalina,
yeah,
where you can actually use your iPad Pro as either an additional screen, or you can work directly to screen by using the sidecar feature. Do you use that? Do you know?
I've tested it out. Yeah, I've tried that a few times. It's really, really good.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it works seamlessly.
Yeah.
I mean, I have like, so my computer's here. I have my iPad Pro here, and you can literally just drag and drop windows straight over, like it was a second desktop. It's brilliant. And yeah, I mean, if you are using Apple Pencil with Photoshop or Illustrator or anything, you can then use that as a tablet as well, which is, it's brilliant. It's really, really good.
Super fun, I think. Really, really, really nice. And if you're paying a subscription for something else, it means that you can drop that subscription, of course, which is really, really handy. Nobody minds that too much at the current time. Let's have a look through and see if we've got, so people are asking about the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro. That's more of a community question. I don't think so. Robert's asking, did you have any training, Ron? But I think you kind of came into it organically, didn't you? Through travels. Yeah,
for sure. YouTube, and I mean, the thing is, right? There's so much information on the internet. You can find whatever you're looking for. So, and I like to learn in my own way. So, I prefer doing that.
Well, I think you can provided you expose yourself to as many different sources as possible. I think that's the way, isn't it, to learn, get a broad thing. And I mean, your evidence that it can be done, right? That you're, it's fantastic stuff. I think Tim ought to also put if he hasn't done already, and I'm sure he has, because Tim is incredible, should put your Instagram and any of the other links he has for you into our chat just here. Let's see. So, and also, by the way, for the community, don't forget, we are here every day between 12 and 1. And also, don't forget, you can join our Discord too. So this conversation can carry on beyond the stream. So your links are going in just there. What is your editing setup, Ron? What is it? What's it like?
So I use an iMac, 27-inch iMac, and yeah, I love it. I've had it for a number of years. And then, just a mouse, keyboard. I've also got a trackpad, which I use for certain things. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, great. And that is pretty much it. I mean, I'm in terms of storage for my images, I'm one of those people, I've got loads of different hard drives. So I'm looking into getting maybe like a RAID system at the moment, just so I can have everything securely backed up. But yeah, it is pretty simple. Not too much more than that. So
the thing I was going to ask you as well earlier on, which we kind of dipped into a little bit, was about developing your style, how you went about the process of developing style. I mean, I guess really you've answered that in the main, but are there any quick tips you could give to people for how they would develop a style, the things to look for?
Yeah, for sure. Practice. I think one of the biggest things in photography is practice. I mean, you can read all the books you want, you can watch all the tutorials, but you need to actually go out there and shoot. So you can learn what you like to photograph. Because even the stuff you like to see on the internet or wherever, you might find that you don't enjoy taking photos of it. You might find it's problematic, or where you reside doesn't lend itself well for that. So there are lots of different things. So I think you really have to spend time shooting and learning what you as a person want to shoot. That's the first and foremost thing. Also, saying that, look at other sources of inspiration. And what I like to do is I mean, I've got a lot of photography books, and I'll go through and I'll use a physical paper and pen, and I'll jot down what aspects of each photographer's work I like, or aspects of the photos I like, and then I'll put them into a big melting pot and then see how I can combine them together. So it's not stealing people's ideas, it's re-engineering them or reworking them. So I think that's a good way to look at it. And yeah, just read as much as possible. I mean, some of my favorite photographers at the moment, there's a guy called Jimmy Nelson, who's incredible, and he photographs tribes that are dying out, and his imagery is just unbelievable. Absolutely incredible. There's a street photographer who's passed now, but her name is Vivian Meyer.
Right. Okay.
She's very, very good. She was actually a nanny. She didn't have any relatives or anything. She was unknown, taking photos of Brooklyn, I think in the 50s and 60s, and beautiful, beautiful work, incredible moments. But when she passed away, all the negatives were left in an attic in the house where she was. The house was then bought, and somebody found the negatives and decided to get a process, and they were so unbelievable. She just became, her work is now famous.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting documentary on YouTube about that as well.
Okay. Well, if Tim has access to that, or if Tim can find it, drop a link into the chat, Tim, please, if you could. That'd be great. So that name again, that name again, Ron, was, sorry, just for the people that didn't catch it, Vivian.
Vivian Meyer. So it's spelled Vivian. Yeah. And then the surname is Maier.
Fantastic. There we go. So Tim is amazing, and he will find that stuff for us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't think that's for you. I think that's for the community. Have you been?
Shall I edit this in the background as well?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, fab.
Cool.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's following the same process pretty much as what I did before. I might talk a little bit about. I'll do this really, really quickly.
That's all right. We're good. We're good.
So
We've got a good 10 minutes. We're fine.
Okay, awesome. I mean, so what I've done so far is I've done the transform again. So this was without it. This is with it. It just makes all the lines on the side straight. Perspective is a lot cleaner. I've changed the exposure and cropped the image just a little bit. So I think we're going to change the white balance now. And again, with the white balance picker tool, I'm going to look for a gray area. And normally tarmac or roads are gray. So, I mean, the numbers are pretty close to each other. So, I mean, I'll give that a click and see. But as you can see, it's just warmed up the image. It's now corrected the white balance. From there, I might tweak it a little bit. I think it's a little bit green. So I'm going to move it to the purple side, which is a little bit. And there we go. So, I mean, just with those adjustments, this is before and this is after. Really powerful tools. I think the reason I normally underexpose my images just so that I can retain the detail and the highlights. One thing is, like, once you've blown out highlights or overexposed the highlights, you can't get them back. Even if you are shooting raw, it's harder to get them back. So try and make sure that your highlights are always in, basically.
Sound advice.
And then from here, you can then tweak the highlights back down, you know. Right, so from this section, I'll add my preset. I don't like to edit too heavily. I don't want it to look too surreal. I just kind of want to enhance the image a little bit. So my color adjustments aren't too major. I don't go over the board with editing. And yeah, I mean, from here, there are two ways you can bring back the sky in the top half of the image. So you can bring down the highlight slider, of course. Or you can use the graduated filter, and you can drag from the top and drag it down. And what that means now is the majority of the change, well, 100% effect is going to happen in this section up here, and then it's going to move slowly into 50% and then 0% effect at the bottom. And yeah, it just means you can get greater control over the sky. Without affecting the rest of the image that you don't want to. So I think something like that could work. There are also other ways you can adjust the range, so you can adjust luminance. I won't go into that.
Yeah,
really powerful stuff as well.
You can brush it out too, right? By switching it to brush mode in that adjustment. Yeah.
So you can go, and then you can edit on a brush. I think you do it like this, I think.
If you go back to the gradated mask there, the gradated filter, you should see just above the controls, there's a thing called brush. That's the one.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're showing it to people though, isn't it? To remember exactly what everything is.
Exactly. And then, I mean, you can erase them. Oops. You can then, basically you can then brush out the building.
Yeah.
So that it's not affecting that. Yeah. Just for time, I'm going to leave that as it is. You can add clarity as well to add some contrast within the midtones. So instead of overall contrast, which affects everything from the darkest points to the brightest points of the image, you can actually add some clarity which affects the midtones. I don't tend to add too much clarity. I find that it gets a bit garish when you get to like that. I mean, that looks nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe like something between like 10. Yeah, I like to keep around 10. I think it's fine. And again, I'll give an overview of the tone curve that I created. So I've got the normal one, which just adds a little bit of fade. But this is where the real magic happens. So in the red, green, and blue channels, I've added contrast individually within each channel to create the kind of color aspects I want and the contrast. So yeah, I'd love to do another tutorial on like.
I think we'd love to have you back. Actually, I think it'd be really nice, maybe to get you back. It's the subject of a discussion. I'm sure that that the team will the hidden team will have about. Maybe you come along and do a bit of a masterclass for us. I think that would be over a couple of days or so.
Yeah,
really nice. We have just about 3 minutes of natural time, as it were. We can overrun a little bit. That's just fine. By a few minutes is fine. But just to remind people that join our Discord. You can carry on the conversation here. If you've got work to share there, you can do that too. So please do. But Ron, carry on. And
all right. I'll show you just a couple other things I love doing. So when it comes to color, you can be really selective about what colors you edit in using Lightroom. And so obviously you've got the sliders here. You've got the hue sliders, saturation, and luminance. Now, I mean, for example, in this image, I really want to brighten up or add some more color into the light that's bouncing off the bridge. So what you might do, you might look at that and say, okay, that looks like an orange. I'm going to boost the saturation of orange. But actually, that's not as specific as you can get. Now, that color is not just orange. It's made up of yellows and other different colors. Yeah. So if you want to edit the exact colors there, there's this little knob here. I don't know what would you call it? Like little... I don't know, a button. Oh,
the on-image adjustment.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, on-image adjustment.
On-image adjustment.
Tool thingy.
Exactly, yeah. So you can click that, and then you can actually select the color you want to adjust. Click and hold, and then you can drag up and down. And like, as you can see on the right-hand side in the sliders, it's moving the actual colors that it is. So I'm going to boost that a little bit. I like the browns as well, which are also kind of red. So I'm going to saturate that a little bit more. I might desaturate this lime green color bit and a bit of the blues as well. Not too much. And I might bring down a little bit of the blue. And that's just an easy way to edit colors. Like, it's really, really simple. And again, you can do that with the hue. So you can drag and move that around. So yeah, have fun with that. Split toning is where you kind of get the vibe, or you add some more mood through color grading. And so for this image in particular, what I'll do is I'll add a little bit of warmth to the highlights. I mean, a way you can do that to see the effects is you can use this cursor tool. You can pick the color you want. I think maybe something like that. And then you can then just use a saturation slider and drag it down and see fit. So I'm not going to do.
So here's where you can get your cross-process effects as well.
Exactly.
Really beautiful.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna
mess with the tonality in a great way. Yeah.
Yeah, 100. It's really, yeah. Honestly, every single tool in Lightroom is very powerful, and if you know how to use them in relation to each other, then yeah, you can work wonders. I mean, that's just without it. That's with it. So it's just warmed up a little bit. Cool. For this one, I'm nearly done. I guess I'm just going to add a little bit of a vignette, just so that I can draw the attention into the bridge and the person. And what I'm going to do, I really want to brighten up this person. So I'm going to use a radial filter, and I'm going to draw around this person.
Yeah,
something like that. I'm going to feather it a little bit more so that the fall off is a bit smoother. And then from here, like, you can just bump up the exposure. Really simple. And then that way, there's a bit more of a pop, like the person stands out a bit more.
Yeah, they've got that extra bit of foreground interest, or mid-ground interest really there, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. There we go.
That'll be my Lightroom edit.
Ron, that's amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. And actually, we're pretty much on it for today, which is great. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Everybody's really enjoying this. Steve saying that was excellent, Ron. Sandrine, that was really good. Yeah, people are going to look at this. It's great stuff. So yeah, no, thank you. I do hope that you'll come and join us again, Ron, at some point. It's been a real pleasure having you on today. Just once again, everybody, just a reminder that we are here every weekday between 12 and 1. And again, the conversation doesn't have to end at this point. You can come along, join our Discord, get more involved with the community. It's been a great network for sharing creative ideas and a support network for many as well, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing in these very, very strange times, especially for the creatives. Really, really hard. So again, Ron, thank you very much. I do apologise for calling you Tim earlier, but I did keep a little tick list next to me, and I only did it once. So that particular earworm vanished.
Twice
really
now.
Good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye.